Hello, how's everybody doing? This is my video presentation. So the thing that I'm going to be addressing is um, the importance of ethics in the workplace and ministry, and have to include three scholarly sources, non-popular press. So the first thing I'm going to cover is Christ-centered ideas of ethics in leadership. What does the Bible say about that? What does the Bible say about the importance of ethics in our personal lives, work, and ministry? Well, when you're looking at Christ-centered leadership, we got to go to the Bible and take things from the Bible as far as our ethics and principles, because the Bible gives us many different ethics and principles to go by. And just for example, one would be one that we should use in our personal lives, in our workplace, and in ministry is treat others as you want to be treated. Because as long as we're treating everybody the way we want to be treated, we can almost guarantee that we'll stay within, um, the proper ethical position. If we're in a leadership position and we follow that, we'll stay. Our ethics should be we should be following our ethics pretty good. But once we get outside of that, we start treating people other than the way we want to be treated. Then I think we become on the wrong side of ethics. We'll be doing the wrong thing, because ethics is about doing the right thing. Um, some contemporary cultural issues regarding ethics in leadership or or the church. Well, some of those things would be like a language barrier. Depending upon where you come from in the world, your cultural ideas may clash. Where you might see, for example, in this part of the world, they may look at marriage in one way, whereas then you come to the Western world, we may see marriage in a different way, as far as how you go about it, what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. I think culturally, those could be some issues when you're in leadership and when you're in church. And also looking at the outside world, what's going on in the secular world, can also be a problem because they don't necessarily always align with what's going on inside the church. It's typically going to be different. So that could be a cultural, because the culture of the church, spiritual culture versus secular culture is very different. And those are some of the issues and problems that you can run into is because of those differences. The way the world see marriage and the way the world see sexual behavior and things like that will be a lot different than what you see when you're inside the church. And a personal plan that I plan to apply, that I learned this semester, is when it comes to ethics, I always had this thing where I would separate my ethics. So when I went to church, when I'm in church, I treat people at church with biblical ethics. But when I'm outside of church, I'm not really looking at everybody that I'm around in the same light as far as how I should treat them ethically. I don't think I intentionally done anything unethical to anyone, but it could be a bias there. And I'm only doing that because I'm not in church and I don't know who this person is that I'm dealing with. But one thing that I'm going to start applying is more biblical ethics to everybody that I meet and run across, regardless of if I know them from church or not. Now, the importance of ethics in the workplace. This source is from Achieving the Ethical Workplace by Stephen Bonchek and Donald Menzel. And what they have stated in their book was, in the process of developing organizational values from ethical principles, a clear picture arises of what is critically important to an organized organization and its members, such as values as customer service, employee empowerment, professionalism, and integrity. Provide the parameters for ethical decision making in the workplace. And because if you got good customer service, then most likely people are gonna they won't feel like they've been treated unethically. And being when you have a good environment with integrity, that's also going to help out with people acting more ethically. And when you give employee empowerment and give them the opportunity to be able to choose, have more input and more say so, it keeps them from doing unethical things. So the more you push the professionalism, integrity, the customer service, the less chances you are having your employees or people in leadership or in a workplace do things that's unethical because they won't feel the need to. And the other article that I found was the importance of ethics in church, um, and that was by Professor Prabhakar, Indian Institute of um, it's the Indian Institute of International Technology. He said, "What is ethics? Why we may consider ethics to be a science of conduct. Ethics include the fundamental ground rules by which we live our lives. Philosophers such as Socrates and Plato have given guidelines for ethical behavior. Many ethicists consider emerging ethical beliefs to be uh, legal principles. What becomes an ethical guideline today is made into law, regulation, or rule. So when we look at these guidelines today, they become the ethical rule, like the law of the land. And we know we follow by the law of the land. You most likely going to be um, within your ethic. With you, I'm sorry, I'm messing this all up. You're most likely going to be very ethical. Therefore, following the law of the land is one of the basic virtues of ethics, values which guide how we ought to behave. Our moral values such as respect, honesty, fairness, and responsibility. So inside the church, if we are doing things fair, we treat people with respect and honesty, forgive fairness and responsibility, then we are being very, very ethical. The importance of ethics in ministry is according to the Journal of Business Theology, Motubazi Placide, Sangwa Sixbert, and Nieti Getka Jean Pierre. Um, ethics, ethics in ministry will keep us from breaking the laws and rules that God has set for us. In in Open Journal, they say that we should resist the temptation to construct a pharisaical list of do's and don'ts, but rather look to biblical ethical principles to guide our decision making. For example, love God with all our heart, soul, and mind, and love our neighbors as ourselves. That's something that I had talked about earlier, but that's the reason why it's important to have ethics in church, is because if we're not loving each other with all our heart, with our soul, with all our mind, then we're not in line with biblically of how we should be acting in church. We should have those ethics and all those things in line inside the church by sticking to what God say we should do ethically. And it's all right there in the books. And there's so many good examples of why that's important. And that's going to build a culture and the foundation of that church. And people that come into that church will realize how great it is because the people are being very, very ethical by following God's word. Hey, thank you.